boom, 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 boom. What up, folks? I am freaking ecstatic to be back. I love doing this. I was just talking to Khouba about how much I'm just passionate about doing this podcast, and it makes me so excited. You know, it's funny because people get nervous in front of camera, are nervous talking, and it does the opposite effect to me. When I get to talk to amazing people like Khouba and hear their life story and do what I love, there's just something about my heart rate that goes down and I'm at ease. And I'm very excited. So before we get into this amazing human being across the screen from me, some just midlife crisis updates and Mikey G updates. So for midlife crisis, I've said this multiple times, my co-founder Matty is still alive. He's working really, really hard at a real estate company. Unfortunately, had to kind of get that real job. We were really floating the entrepreneurship thing there for a while, but he had to buckle down and get some solid income. But that's going to change over the future. And like I said, when we started this company, we thought of three pillars: investing, real estate, and media. I'm really kind of heading up the media side. Maddie's going to tackle the real estate. And we both are horrible investors. So we're going to pay somebody to do that for us. Because trust me, in the last 3 years in crypto, I've made hundreds of thousands of dollars, but I've lost the majority of that as well. So, you know, that's something that I need to get better at. But I just have no desire to do that. So Maddie's still grinding hard. As far as Mikey G NFT brand, it's the best thing that Midlife Crisis as a podcast company or media company has done. Because the honest truth about Web3 and media is it is still solely driven by solo influencers and content creators. It is very difficult to build a media company in this ecosystem. So we've really doubled down on the Mikey G NFT brand because I got my kind of big start as a hate beast mod. The biggest mistake we've made so far is I abandoned Mikey G NFT all last year. I didn't do one tweet, lost a ton of followers, just totally got rid of that momentum. I don't know why I did that, but we did it because we tried to concentrate on the podcast company. That being said, amazing year already. One of the few plague PFPs that has an official plague space. I'm getting amazing people like Khouba on. We've already had imaginary ones right before their token drop. Amazing conversation. Just hired a business manager, man, the myth, the legend, Edge. Some of you might know him from Llamaverse, which was a massive project back in the day. This dude is sharp, been in many mastermind classes. Me and him are teaming up and we're getting shit done. I am so freaking excited. I'm so amped up. But enough about me. We got to get to the man, the myth, the legend, Khouba. And before I say hi to him, I'm just going to drop a little bit of knowledge on you. If you all saw that little video teaser, did I find the next Zuckerberg? The reason why I said that is this man has worked for Meta. So he might even have met Zuckerberg. I don't know. He went to France, one of the top business schools, to study business. He started multiple companies, failed, and is still got up, and now is here talking about Primis Protocol. And did I say that right, by the way? I don't want to keep on botching it. Primis Protocol, right? Yep. Shit, exactly. Man, I nailed it. That was the first time. I didn't even ask you how to pronounce it correctly, so nailed that. But yeah, he started Primis Protocol after failing multiple times, and I will tell you this. One of the best educations you can get as an entrepreneur is failing, getting back up, and trying again. So with all that being said, welcome to the show, Khouba. I am so excited to have you here. How you doing, brother?
Jam, everybody. Hi, Mikey. Hope you're doing good. I'm ecstatic to be here, honestly. Excited about the vibes and about the journey that we're about to embark on together on this podcast. So more than happy to be here.
Dude, so pumped as well. So this is how we're going to do it, man. It's really simple. We got your little intro. We know who you are. Very, very small glimpse into your beautiful life. And we're going to ask that one question, the famous midlife crisis question. And that is, how did you get to the seat you're sitting in today? Please give us episode 1, 2, and 3. And a little tidbit for you. We used to say Star Wars episode 1, 2, and 3. But technically that's not chronologically right. And I kept on getting called out for that. So I just turned it into episode 1, 2, and 3 to get you the idea that we're interested in that chronological order. So episode 1, for anybody that hasn't been here before, is really childhood. And, as much as you feel comfortable, but I'm interested in what molded your mindset at a young age. I think that's extremely important. Uh, Episode 2 is really your professional career, whether it be college if you're younger. You obviously said you worked for Meta. Skill sets gained there, any mentors you had there. And then 3, how did episode 1 and 2 prep you for Web3? What you're doing now, and what does the future look like? So I cannot wait to have this conversation, man. Have at it.
Yeah, well, excited to share more. Well, first, quick thing. This is my first Web3 podcast ever, so happy to do my first one with you, Mikey. So yeah, if we go back to episode 1, that will be childhood. So childhood, Khouba, very normal kid. I grew up in a third world country, actually, so in Tunisia, Northern Africa. And I've been always super curious about tech, about how things work. My mom has this story that she always tells to everybody. When I was around 6, I took her phone and I just decided to just deconstruct it and reconstruct it all on my own, just to understand how everything works. And I think that just tells a lot about how I view the world. For me, everything is a puzzle that I try to solve. And at a young age, I witnessed the Arab Spring, so the revolutions in Arab countries. I've been directly affected as I was in Tunisia. I was around 10 years old back then when it happened. And I've seen like the power of the people and the power of unity. When people come together with one mission in mind, they can achieve amazing things. And that's something that I always believed in, is that nobody is actually special, but some people do special things, especially when they are together. And I've seen that with my own eyes. People were suffering over 50 years of dictatorship in my country, and one day they just decided enough is enough and decided to gain back their freedom, to move on with democracy and to start a new life. And they just did that peacefully, no bloodshed, nothing, and they just took over, and democracy has been happening ever since over there.
So I have to jump in here, man, because that actually gave me chills. Right now, I know you were 10 years old, but the fact of the power of the people could stand up and say, "Hey, something is wrong." Your experience at that age, or even reflecting back, was there a main catalyst, or is it just suffering for multiple years? Like, what was it to be a part of that? Because from one aspect, someone, most people can say, "Hey, that's horrific. That had to be horrible." But from another aspect, I feel like it's been like a learning opportunity as well. And you have had an intimate experience going through something like that. Any thoughts or insights there? Because that's fascinating to me.
Yeah, I believe at some point people just think enough is enough, enough suffering, enough being second-class citizens in our own country, enough not having freedom like other people in the world. For example, when it happened to us 2011, we didn't even have access to YouTube before that. We only had access to a very simplified version of Facebook, a very simplified version of the internet. A lot of researches that you do on Google back then, you will have like it's forbidden. A white page will pop up, you can't access it. And people felt like as if they were disconnected from the rest of the world, plus poverty and everything. So people really suffered from that. And yeah, I was young, but my parents took me out to the marches. I was there. I was watching it. I was watching people, fight for their lives, and that was really a catalyst for me to always strive for something bigger than myself, to strive for the people. To find greatness even in the places where you won't think there's greatness. Actually, to really focus on the people, focus on and that's kind of a link with Web3, where it's all about the community in the end. It's people that decide. It's not like, for example, the VCs or anything, but it's really just the people in the end that have the end game in their own hands and decide what works and what not. So that was really an inspiring time for me back then. So yeah, it was really the catalyst for my life. And as I said, we didn't have YouTube, we didn't have anything before that. And on the 30th of January 2011, when the old dictator fled the country, we just woke up one day, we had access to YouTube, we had access to the full Google, we had access to the full Facebook. And honestly, to that 10-year-old kid, my mind was blown. I mean, I was accessing things that I never thought existed before. I was discovering YouTube for the first time. It was honestly, I can't tell you how it was an orgasmic experience for me back then to just find there's a whole other new world to discover. And so that's even when I started to look into crypto and everything, but we'll get into
Yeah.
that later on. But yeah, it was an amazing time, honestly, to see my parents that weren't politicized before that when I was younger, but to start getting active with the community, with everything. The community was protecting themselves during those times, during those riots and everything. People formed like alliances in the neighborhoods to just protect themselves from thieves or people that will come to pillage and stuff. So it was really an amazing time to be a part of, and I can look back in 20, 30 years from now and say I was part of something historic that happened. So
That's amazing, dude. And oh man, this is already an incredible conversation. You said two things. One more thing, and I'm really interested in this in the sense that when you think revolution, you think uprising. You said I immediately say bloodshed, horrible wars, but you actually did say part of it was peaceful in a sense. What are your just like going through something like that? What are your general thoughts on peaceful takeovers versus violent takeovers? Like, you have this perspective that a lot of people, like I said, don't. I'm interested in that dynamic. Do you have any thoughts there?
yeah, I mean, I believe I'm a very pacifist person myself, and I believe that peaceful takeovers always lead to the best outcomes in the end compared to violent takeovers. And I mean, it was shown again and again in history, and it's, I mean, everything is cyclic, right? Everything happens in cycles, and history repeats itself. But for example, when you take a look at other neighboring countries of Tunisia that had their revolutions at the same time but took the violent route to take their dictator off and to change the regime, I mean, today they are failed states. Nothing has changed there. I mean, it's more dangerous, more violent than before. But in Tunisia, I mean, the people decided to go the peaceful way, just go outside in the street. More than 50% of the population was in the streets at all times.
Right.
I mean, so that was the best road to take, the best path to take, I believe. And yeah, I mean, peaceful takeovers always lead to the best outcomes in my perspective.
Dude, I love that, man. And it's just refreshing to hear. And the last question is, I actually have two more questions. I'm interested about back to like the puzzle narrative that you talked about. And then obviously you mentioned your parents. So I want to touch on that, and then we can kind of start going forward. But the fact that this peace thing is interesting to me, and the one thing in my mind and the question I'm having is insights into how do you do that peaceful transition, right? Like, what does peace look like to you in a situation like this? You mentioned one example, which was like just staying on the streets, using the masses to kind of prove a point. Are there any other aspects in there that ring a bell with you?
I mean, yeah, honestly, because in the end, and I'm talking only from my experience and from what I've lived. I mean, I don't know about other people's experiences and else, but in our case, for example, it was honestly everybody in the army, everybody in the assemblies, everybody just connected with the people in the end, because in the end, we are just all one people, and it's the case in most countries, when you see your whole population go out in the street protesting the regime. And I mean, you are a guy, for example, you are a soldier, but you see your cousins, your mother, your aunt are in the streets protesting. I mean, you're not going to take arms and decide to, okay, I'm going to shoot them, I don't care about my family, because there's this sense of community, of belonging that is very, very strong in this, in our most tribal instincts as human beings. I mean, even though we've evolved through thousands of years, we're still very, very, very primitive in our most basic instincts. And so I think that sense of belonging, when you see your whole population out in the streets, you just decide, okay, in what side of the history do I want to be a part of? Do I want to be a
Right.
part of where I just decided to just extinguish my whole population, decide to kill them all, or just okay, I understand you. Let's have a dialogue. Let's move forward together, and let's see how we can transition together.
Hmm.
I mean, Tunisia, for example, they took that route because we had really strong foundations as a country. We had a very long history before that. We have a really strong sense of patriotism and nationalism, in the country. So people really wanted the best outcome for everybody. So yeah.
Yeah, dude, I love that. And you said a couple things that are really interesting. One, you made me think tribalism, right? That is how and I don't think people talk about this enough, but like we are by nature like to travel in groups, communicate, and we're social people, right? So one, just random tangent, there is a fantastic book called Tribal Leadership. Highly recommend to read that. But two, to your point, we all, and I say this all the time to kind of cap off what you said, whatever we look like at the end of the day, we all bleed red blood, right? It's all the same. We have the same wants and needs, family, friends, security, all of those things. And it's just mind blowing how bad it can go. And you ladder that up to Web3, right? What we're doing now is so incredibly important, but yet we're just blinded by all of this basically fake news, how big we can make our bags when what we're doing and connecting on a level and really trying to understand what all our special skill sets are and how we can move this space forward in a meaningful way, so critically important. Any other thoughts on that?
I mean, I totally connect with that because first, so I'm a fan of history and I love to dig like some historical facts and everything. And my conclusion, the thing that I always come back to when I'm talking with people is that, okay, we are hyper evolved technologically, but we are still so basic in our own nature as human beings. It's such a fragile nature, but it's so embedded in us, this primitive sense. Because for example, I was looking at something the other day. It was writings of an Egyptian that lived during the pyramids constructions, and basically the guy, he had like this private diary, and his main concern was, oh my god, today I just had a fight with my best friend. I don't know who I'm going to drink with anymore after the work. And I mean, it just resonated so much with me because if you take
Right.
somebody that lived 4,000 years ago, today we're going to have the same issues, the same concerns. We just want to make peace with people around us. We just want to be happy in the end. I mean, it's all about happiness, I believe, and we just want to thrive, in our lives. And as you said in the beginning, we are very social. We are very social animals in the end. I mean, you see it with sports, even in Web3, with communities around the project. People like to have that sense of belonging to something and being a part of a group, because that's the only way for us to thrive in the end. We don't like to be alone, lonely in our own little path where nobody is with us and we can't connect to nobody. And I feel like
Right.
that
Right.
causes sadness in the end for people.
Yeah, and if you really break down, one of the biggest things that happened in the beginning was Bored Ape, right? And if you
Yeah,
really break down what Bored Ape is, it was just an exclusive group that made a shit ton of money, right?
yeah,
So if you add being able to monetize and then being part of a group from all walks of life across the world, that's just like super special, and that's why that happened, right? And it's fascinating to me that we continue to get in our own way. I do love this conversation already. This is fantastic. I want to rewind two things that came up in my mind that were really interesting to me. Any more about this, you kind of life is a puzzle? Did that come from kind of like going through a revolution in those experiences, or were you always kind of innately or inherently like interested in that stuff? This is always fascinating to me. I've brought this up multiple times, but for instance, Tiger Woods, like greatness versus being good at something. Tiger Woods, in my mind, had an innate ability to just be good at golf. He understood how to swing a golf club. It came natural to him, right? But then he had a kind of a tyrant as a dad that made him play golf all the time. So when you combine those two, that's where greatness occurs. So really the question I'm getting at is, was that puzzle piece kind of fitting things together? Do you feel like that was a innate thing you always had, or did you get that through experience?
So it's two things actually. So it's first it's innate, but it's also thanks to my mother. Is she's like my role model, my mentor in life, honestly.
Love
So
it.
yeah, so the innate part. I mean, there's this funny story when I was like around 4 years old or something. We had a chicken at home, and I was always looking at this chicken. I was like, why is it not flying like the other birds, you know? And so I decided to just take it, throw it in the air, and I just see it land back, and it doesn't want to fly. So I was like, okay, this doesn't make sense. I'm seeing these pigeons out while they are flying, and you can't fly. And so I just decided to take the chicken, look at its wings, and started to understand. Oh, its wings doesn't really look like the other birds that are flying, and so okay, they are kind of atrophied in a way, and that's why the chicken can't fly and stuff. But I hate not understanding something. That was
Mm,
that always triggered me from being a baby. I mean, I always try to understand what is happening around me, and I believe, I mean, that's also a very basic human thing. I believe to try to
right.
always understand what is going on around you and try to find answers to your questions. And then, as I said, there's also my mother, because amazing woman, God bless her soul. She believed that people are not born smart or geniuses, but people are taught to be geniuses and smart. That was her way of
Mm,
thinking. And so, from a very young age, she decided to stimulate me from with a lot of different things. Whether it was music, she helped me. She made me take classes to learn instruments. Whether it was sports, I was doing karate, judo, even riding horses and everything. But also, like at home, when I mean, funny thing, when I went to school at 6 years old, when it was my first year in school, I already knew how to write, read, count up to 100, multiply, subtract, and do everything, because she just believed that you can create a genius. You know, the person is not born super
love it.
smart, but you can take it and mold it into a person that is very, very smart. And she had this book. It was the father of a very famous Russian chess master. I don't remember the name, but basically the dad, he just gave the guide on how to build like a super smart kid and how to raise a super smart kid, basically. And so she
Do you
just,
remember what the name of the book was?
I need to search it. I need to ask my mom the name of the book.
You have to DM that to me, man, because I want to
Yeah,
read
of
it.
course, definitely. And so yeah, I mean, my mom, she always just instilled this thing in me, like never be satisfied with what is around you, but always try to understand how you can improve everything, but not
Yeah,
in a negative way, but in a very positive way, where it was always, you can be better, you always need to improve yourself, you should never be complacent or content with where you are at the moment, because there's always higher levels you can reach, you know.
right.
So that was something that really motivated me and was embedded in me at a young age. So yeah.
Yeah, and isn't that beautiful? That totally came full circle about innate abilities and putting in the hard work. And I love to actually hear that because he just turned 9 months old, and I have a similar perspective on being a parent, which is you just need to expose them to as much as possible and variety. And I think we do ourselves a disservice, at least here in America. I don't know what it's like in the rest of the world, but we're so hyper focused on STEM, which is basically uh, engineering, math, uh, all of the sciences, right? When I think the most powerful tool we have is creativity,
Yeah.
because creativity forces you to kind of expand the brain and think differently. And we are moving quickly towards a world, and I say this all the time, and I'd love your thoughts on this. We're going down to very few skill sets with the evolution of AI, and that is, how do you lead and manage people, right? How do you critically think, and then how to be creative? Other than those skill sets, there's not going to be much more that you can monetize, right? That's why you always hear like content creation or content creators are king, which I firmly do believe. But the problem with that statement is a lot of people do it just to do it and don't really analyze, how do I fit into that content creator picture, right? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you, and especially on the creativity part. You know, I feel like, first of all, there's a lack of creativity that is embedded in kids, in the way we are teaching them. And I mean, it's even in France, I see it with like some of my friends that are young parents now and stuff. They just put their kids, like, they buy them those STEM books and coding books for kids and stuff so they can understand. But they're just training robots in a way, they're just creating their own little AI individual that doesn't have really a creative sense. And also the fact that kids nowadays are so much sheltered compared to 10, 20 years ago, and even back before that. I mean, today you don't even let the kid experience suffering, failing, fighting its own fears and stuff like that. And that is something that is unfortunate today, and that's why it's creating these new generations where I believe people are weaker than before. I'm not trying to be controversial, but I feel
Right.
like people are weaker than before. For example, when I was a kid, I used to fear water, and I used to hate going to the beach and everything. And just one
Right.
day, my mom, she just decided to take me, and she just threw me in the beach, inside of the water and stuff. And once I was in it, I was like, okay, this is not scary at all. Actually, this is okay. I'm not dying or
Yeah.
anything. I can survive. And it's just about teaching the kid how to fail, how to excel, how to fight his fears, and how to become a creative individual.
Yeah. Yeah.
Stimulating him not only through engineering, coding, math, but also through music, through drawing, through painting,
Right.
through just even talking with the kid. I mean, having conversations, genuine conversation with your own kid, I believe is something that is vital, for him. Not talking to him like a kid, but talking to him like a person. I mean, like an individual, trying to understand what are his thoughts, what he dreams about, what he likes, what he doesn't like, what makes him happy, and just
Right.
genuine conversation with your kid could be really a good catalyst for his creativity one day.
Yeah. Yeah. And there, you said so many interesting things there. And kind of another take on it is what you were saying is, a lot of the sciences, until you get to the real high level stuff, which is a lot of theory, obviously critical thinking there. The Einsteins of the world had these crazy moments of creating something new. But most people do not get to that level. And the basic stuff, even all the way up to college, it's pretty black and white, right? There's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. Whereas that creativity, it's all subjective. And when you live in that world, it really constantly fights your brain to think differently, which I think is such a critical skill set. And to your point, whether it's controversial or not, I think again, this is the frustrating part about being a content creator. Same thing as like I can't imagine being a comedian at this day and age, right? God forbid that you say something that is, you know, derogatory or wrong in any way. You're crucified. When go watch a comedy 30 years ago, they just can't make that stuff anymore.
Yeah.
And it comes from what you were talking about. Again, here in America, and me and my co-founder talk about this multiple times on the podcast. There's a consequence for everything that you do in life, right? And even if your intention is good, right? Prime example, this just happened recently. I live in California, and they just passed a law, which from someone with a good heart totally makes sense, which is anybody that works in the fast food industry, minimum wage is now $20 an hour. That's $40,000 a year, right? But in California, that's poverty. You can't literally live on that, right? And so the intentions are good. But what happens in America, in a hardcore capitalistic society, the company says, fine, I'll pay my workers $20 a year. I mean, $20 an hour. But guess what? I'm just passing the cost on to the consumer. So I'm still going to make as much money as possible. I went to Chick-fil-A and I got 4 meals for the family. It was $87. $87 to eat at a fast food joint for a family of 4. So there's the inherent consequence of that, right? And it's the same thing with what you're talking about, and we call it in the States, the participation ribbon culture, right? You know, for some reason now, first place is a bad thing. And it's like, no, first place is a good thing. And it's okay that you're not in first place, and not everybody should get a ribbon for showing up. That creates a totally different mindset than we had before, where I grew up, right? And there's just consequences to everything. And I think it's a fascinating conversation. And people get really passionate and say you're right or wrong, but I don't think there's a right or wrong. I think all life is gray, and that's the hard part about life is it's gray, and people treat a lot of stuff in black and white, which I don't think it is. So I think that's just a fascinating conversation. Any more thoughts on that? Are you ready to move forward?
Yeah, I mean, last words about it. Yeah, I mean, especially that participation ribbon thing. I've seen it when I came to France at 18. Because, for example, in Tunisia, everybody was pushed to excel. You know, you need to be the number one. You need to win. You need to be the best at school, the best at sports, the best at whatever you are doing. The most important thing is that you be the best. And then when I came to France, I mean, I was doing some. Basically, when I was younger, I was doing a lot of United Nations models, basically simulations of the UN and everything. And for example, in Tunisia, okay, you have this is the best delegate award. This is the best person that was the best during the whole conference and everything. And I did one in Paris when I first came. And at the end of the awards, it was like, okay, so this is everybody that did great, but we're not going to rank you from who is the best to who is the worst. Just did great, you know, and everybody gets an award. And I was like, okay, but you don't teach people that they failed at what they were doing that, you know, by
Right.
everybody, no, you just did okay, don't worry about it. The person needs to fail to understand how they can improve later on down the road.
Yeah, dude. And then it creates no baseline for what good, great, and bad is, right? Because there is not doing a good job at things. And the more successful people in life, now listen, you can define success a bajillion different ways, right? But I'm talking about creating companies, monetizing. There's really two things that that happen in my mind. You can take Web3 for instance, right? You can be mediocre or slightly good, but be first, and you're going to profit and you're going to be able to grow. But once that category is saturated, you have to be the best. And if you're not the best, they're going to fail. And you need to learn these lessons earlier in life to help you prepare for what, and I always said this, I think it's $1 billion industry. If school were just to change to like school of life and say, this is what happens when you get married, this is how to do your finances, this is what life is really like when you have a kid, right? Just like practical things, like that would be so much more beneficial than telling me I need to read Moby Dick and figure out what I am taking from reading that novel. Now, listen, I'm not saying it's a bad novel and there's not knowledge to be gained. There are practical parts of life that we, for some odd reason, just blow by.
I mean, that's a whole other discussion, you know, about school systems and why the school is made that way, because it was, I mean, during the industrialization and everything, and people just needed a place where they can just create and mold these perfect workers, you know, little workers that will just focus on doing tasks and everything. And I believe school will be disrupted too at some point. Educational systems need to be disrupted because they're not caught up with the world that we are living in. I mean, most people graduate and they have zero financial literacy or anything. They don't know how to do their taxes. They don't know how to save. They don't know how to. I mean, it's crazy thing, you know. Mm-hmm. And if you ask him about the Pythagorean theorem, he can answer you. But if you tell him how do you do your taxes, he say, "Oh, I don't know."
Yeah, right. Yeah, Alex Hormozy just, I think he invested in some education company, and he like broke down the stats. Like education is like $1 trillion industry, and is growing, and it's actually happening right now. Traditional universities and colleges are trending down, and online education is skyrocketing. So there will be, it's being disrupted right now for sure. And I think it's actually a huge opportunity in Web3, and we're seeing a lot of, I have recently, literally over the last couple of weeks, a lot of these education Web3 companies coming up trying to tokenize things using AI, all of these different things. But the basic way that you learn, I mean, dude, you don't even need to go. You can just hop on YouTube and you have half of an ambition. You could be a coder in 6 months if you want to, right? And it's just it's an awesome time to live. And I think if people can harness how awesome it is to be alive in this day and age and take advantage of it, it's possibilities are endless. But beautiful conversation, man. Do you see this? Like, we're growing the friendship live online here, right over this virtual campfire that I told you about.
Yeah, no, I love it, man, honestly.
Amazing episode 1. Really, really good thoughts. I'm telling you, man, I could talk to you for 6 hours straight on this podcast. But most people don't want to watch a 6-hour podcast. We just really be benefiting ourselves. So let's transition to episode 2, which is really like, all right, we got a good way of why your mindset is the way it is in your childhood. Now you're thinking about leaving home, figuring out what your next move is. So let's dive into that. And then I know you have a professional career as well and doing entrepreneurship. So let's just get the middle of that before we go into Web3.
Yeah, I mean, so around 2014, 2015, I was around 16 years old back then. I was almost finishing up high school. I had 2 years left in high school. I graduated in 2016. So in 2014, I just started to ask myself, what do I want to get out of this after high school? Do I just want to stay in my country where, unfortunately, there's so many laws that are against entrepreneurship, against innovation, against everything, where you can't really, for example, just to dive in, and I will dive back into it. For example, crypto is still forbidden in Tunisia, for example, at the moment. If you use crypto, if you use Bitcoin, if you use anything, you get 1 year of jail. So, that's a crazy thing. That's a whole other topic.
Jail?
But yes, 1 year of imprisonment for using the cryptocurrencies. Yeah.
Wow.
Because the financial system is still outdated. It's not on par with how things are working in the real world now. But yeah, that's another topic. But so yeah, I mean, I was 16. I was just thinking, okay, what do I want after this? If I stay here, I will be, and we were discussing this yesterday, I will be a big fish in a small pond. And I don't want to be a big fish in a small pond because you can't really improve. You can't really thrive. You can't really find happiness being the biggest fish in a small pond, So I was like, okay, let's just, still have 2 years left of high school. Let's just go after high school. I don't know where yet, but let me just leave my country. Let's leave everything behind, and I will just start a new adventure. And I will be a small fish in a large pond, and I'll just find what life is all about. What is life's meaning? What is my mission here? What should I do? What should I not do? And everything. And so, yeah, 2 years later, I was finishing high school, graduating high school. And at 18 and 1 week, I just took my flight alone to France. Decided, okay, this is it. I was hesitant before because I was accepted also at some US colleges and everything. But in the end, decided to go with France because, I mean, it's closer to my home country. So if anything goes bad, I can still go back.
Right.
It's only like 2 hours by plane. So it's just next door.
What just out of curiosity, what U.S. universities?
So I was actually waitlisted at Harvard, for example.
Oh my God, man.
I had some Ivy Leagues and everything.
Nice.
But I mean, there was a lot of different parameters that made me, choose France in the end. For example, school tuition fees are cheaper in France.
Oh yeah.
It's around $500 a year compared to the $60,000.
Whoa.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, in France,
500.
Yes, it's around $500 a year.
And that's a top tier university.
Yes, all the universities in France are capped. It's like the government regulates the tuition fees for all schools. It's all $500 a year. And then, of course, you have like private business schools that are like around, and they're still, the most expensive one is like $12,000 a year. And people are like, oh my God, this is too expensive. But when you compare it to the US, it's still like six times less. So
do you realize that in the States, there's top high schools, private high schools that are $45,000 a year?
Yeah, no,
it's insane.
It's crazy. I mean, it's a whole business over there from what I read, from what I understand.
It is.
But yeah, so taking everything into consideration, I decided to move to France, to Paris. And I've been there now since 2016. So it's been 8 years plus now here in Paris. So I'm Parisian. I believe I am Parisian now. Yeah, I believe I'm French.
Hold on, you cut out a little bit.
Oh, do you hear me?
you're good now. So I heard, yeah. So I decided to stay in France, and so
Yeah.
pick up from there.
Okay, yeah. So taking all the parameters together, I just decided to move to France in 2016, 18, knowing nobody here. I just came on my own with my dreams, my laptop, and myself. Three things are the only three things I need, and around $500 in my pocket back then. So I was very short on cash, short on everything, but had unlimited dreams and imagination. So I knew I would make it work no matter
Right.
what. And yeah, moved to Paris, 18. Started to know what real life struggles are.
Mm-hmm.
Being short on cash, not finding a place to stay at directly,
Right.
having to move from one place to the other because I couldn't make rent.
Right.
Money was really really tight back then. So yeah, I mean, at the lowest point, I was even just eating, boiling one egg a day to survive on it, because I was prioritizing school, prioritizing rent. And even then, when I started to work and started to make a little bit of money, I was sending it back home to help my family and everything. And yeah,
That's
put
incredible. That's incredible. And there, I'm going to stop you right there. And probably not when you're in the moment, right? But looking back, being able to go through something like that and persevere when you're eating an egg a day and the extra money that you get, you're sending back home.
yeah.
What skill sets or impact do you think that has had on your mindset now, looking back at that time?
I mean, to be honest, first of all, even back then, even at the lowest points, I always knew that greatness awaits me later on down the road. I knew that things are always temporary and things evolve. I mean,
Mm,
everything has an end, So hard times have an end, good times have an end, and that's part of life. You have highs, you have lows. That
right.
is very normal. I mean, just like the heartbeat, like when you see the heartbeat, it does this, and if it was just a stable line, you are dead. So life is all about highs and lows, and it's about how you take them and how you march with them. And so
Yeah.
yeah, it just taught me to be perseverant and also to be very confident in yourself to the point of delusion where you think that no matter what happens to you, it is okay. You can go you can go forward with anything that life throws at you, because in the end you will achieve everything that you wanted to achieve. And I believe that being delusional about myself, about my ambitions, about everything was really the motor behind everything, and
Yeah.
yeah.
It's funny. I don't know if you've heard of this company. They're called Degen Distillery, and they are backed by BrewDog and Google. Sammy has become a good friend, and he's a fantastic human. But he says the same exact thing. Being an entrepreneur and a founder, you have to be delusional at times because there's just such low lows. There's the only way to get through it. It's either this. It's either delusion or like I said in the beginning, I truly found something that I think I'm skilled at, but I also love. It's what I do for the rest of my life. Talking to people like you just gets me so jazzed. Like at the end of this podcast, I already feel like it. If there was a cinder block wall in front of me, I could drive my head through it because I'm just excited and fulfilled right now. Like I love it. One of the things that you said that I think is interesting that I had an amazing question about, but now completely forgot. See, I told you I'd screw this podcast up before you.
Okay, man,
It'll,
it's okay.
it'll come back to me. But
Yeah,
yes,
all about
being
being
being delusional, really believing in yourself. Oh, this is what I was gonna say. To wrap up what you're gonna say, well, what you said in our intro conversation, I told you about I went through this major depressive order, right?
right.
And it was the most horrific thing that I think I'll ever go through. Like I remember vividly reading a article and this guy was like, listen, man, I've had cancer 3 times and I've gone through a major depressive order. I'll take cancer every time. Right.
Yeah.
Like it is when your brain's fucked, things are wild. It's a wild time. But what you said probably resonates. One of the things that resonates with me the most, one, being self-aware. Like you have to understand yourself, and me going through that helped that. But two, what you said, and I firmly believe, and I think people really want to just like slow down and say this clearly, because I think it's such an important point. Nothing lasts forever.
Yeah.
And especially when it's hard, right? And for you to understand that at such a young age is such a powerful tool, because it can't. Nothing does last forever. Nothing in our lives is eternity. And that minuscule thought, knowing when it's as low. I mean, I literally just had this thought probably 2 weeks ago, right? I have a day job. I have an 8-month-old. I'm trying to grow this podcast company. It's a lot, right? And unfortunately, my leader at work is a pain in my ass, right? And I'm thinking to myself, son of a bitch, it's all falling apart. But I literally capped that thought with, this is temporary. It's not going to last forever. And that's such a powerful thought. So thank you for bringing that up, man. I just wanted to put a pin in that, because I think it's something, and this is going to make a great video clip, right? And this is what I was telling you about this conversation. We've already talked about leadership, mentorship, adversity, success, failure, mindset, all of that stuff. So much amazing content. So thank you for bringing that up. Sorry to cut you off, but I thought that was really important to talk about.
Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, it might be the most important thing that somebody can learn in his life. You know, that really, as you said, and as I said before, nothing lasts forever. Everything has a beginning and everything has an end. So if you're in a shitty situation at the moment, don't worry. I mean, you don't need to despair or anything. Just know that your time is coming. Do what you have to do. You know, of course, when I say nothing lasts forever, it doesn't mean that you just sit down, you do nothing, you're like, okay, it's okay, this is a bad situation, but I'm not gonna do anything. It won't last that long. But if you need to also like put in the work, by putting in the work, you shorten the time span of the bad thing happening to you. You know, so that's something that I believed in at a young age.
Yeah, and another great point. As you do adversity and failure and build these mindsets, right? And being able to even say that, you know, it doesn't last forever, or you have a skill set, you can start overcoming these things more quickly. And that is actually like what entrepreneurs are saying when they say learn how to fail, right? What we're talking about is just like a different angle of it. And that's another reason why I love what we do here, right? Is because your mindset and the angle that you're talking about, general principles that everybody knows, it just resonates differently. And then I get to walk away from that and take that as an education. And now I have yet another piece of our tool in my toolbox to talk about general themes in a different way. So, dude, appreciate this insight. It's fantastic. Let's move.
I mean, one thing that I just want to add to it is, and I will go back to it in episode 3 because it concerns Web3, but back then when I had all these struggles, just 6 months before that, I had over 50K in crypto and I lost it all due to some scams. And so imagine the mindset I was in. In the beginning, I was eating myself. I was like, oh my God, if I didn't do all these mistakes, I wouldn't be in this situation. But at the same time, I was like, okay, this is all will make for a great book one day. That was really my mindset back then.
Yeah.
Honestly, all this that is happening to me, it's okay. It will make for a great book one day and I will laugh it off.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Again, nothing lasts forever, honestly.
Yeah. And I love that too, you know, and I went through a similar thing, right? And when I first found this, I won a creative competition with my buddy's Cool Cat. I won a crypto dad. I was up like 40 grand in 2.5 weeks. And then I lost it all because I got scammed by a fake OpenSea help desk agent in the official OpenSea Discord, right? Just didn't know what I was doing. And my takeaway from that was, devastating at the time. But now I transfer all of my profits immediately into a safe wallet, and I actually don't speculate much anymore. I just dump my money into ETH, into Sol, into Bitcoin because I really believe in cryptocurrency. And I've made more money doing that than trying to make a bag overnight by finding the most hype projects, right?
Yeah.
And it's just
Yeah,
a
no, I
simple
mean,
tactic. It's if 90% of the people took that tactic, they'd be way better off in this space.
that's also what happens, in traditional finance. People that try to beat the S&P 500 always lose
Yeah.
over time because they try
Yep.
to speculate and try to think they are smarter than the market. But in the end, nobody is smarter than the market. So if you're
Mm-hmm.
not if you're not ready to be 24/7 in front of your screen trying to analyze everything and what is happening in all of the crypto market, then just stick with the foundations, as you said, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana now.
Yep.
So
Yep.
you will do well over time. So
It's
especially now with
why
ETF and everything.
Right. It's why Warren Buffett exists, right? Yeah, he took risk in the beginning. He had to, but even I worked for a company in the US called Geico Car Insurance. He invested in Geico when he was like, I don't know, in his early 20s, maybe even teens. And even back then, he had the wherewithal to say, how is your business model? Is it a sound business model? And is it going to be cash rich, right? And that's just been his principle the entire time. Has built and has become one of the most wealthiest people in the world based off these same principles, right? So yeah, it's just really interesting. So take us in more just amazing, beautiful thoughts. Take us into kind of your professional career, whether and because I want to get to Web3. Believe it or not, we're almost at an hour and we haven't
It
got.
moves fast, honestly.
Yeah, it goes fast because it's a beautiful, beautiful conversation. I want to spend at least a half hour on Web3. So, kind of give me the cliff notes. But again, in this section, I'm really interested in two things. One, did you have any mentors in this time? You worked for Meta, which is a massive company. It's probably an interesting time. And then two, skill sets gained because going through this more professional career, you do pick up skills, right?
Yeah, my first so yeah, I came to France. At first, I was studying law, actually, business law. And then I decided to move to a business school because I didn't think I would end up being a lawyer. I didn't see myself being a lawyer. I had
Right.
always this entrepreneurial spirit inside of me, and I realized quickly that my biggest skill is I know how to sell things to people, and I know how to and I understand opportunities. Basically, I can find the gap in the market, and I know what I need to do, and I know how to sell to the right people. And so my first entrepreneurial experience, it was back in 2017. So after all these struggles, I don't know why, one day I was scrolling Google Maps actually, and I was searching for a barber next to my home, and I couldn't find anything on Google. But I was like, okay, wait a second. When I go outside in the street, I see all these barbers in the street, but when I'm on Google Maps, I'm not seeing any of them. And so I was like, okay, wait, let me create Google business profiles for all of these barbers, all these barbershops.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was, now today they call it SMMA and everything, and they have all these agencies trend, but this was back in 2017. So I decided just to go door to door to all the barbershops and beauty salons next to me first, to build them their Google business profile so they can be visible on Google Maps, and also build them a little website where people can take appointments. And I started doing that, and quickly I was at almost 14K monthly, just doing Google business profile pages for barbershops and beauty salons. It just took me 30 minutes per company, and I was just taking in so much money back then. And so I was taking in the money, investing it back into crypto because, and we'll get into it, I'm a big believer, honestly. I truly believe
Yeah.
in the ecosystem and everything from a young age. So I was investing a lot, and I was also paying for my business school because, as I said, the most expensive ones are around 12K here in France a year. So I was paying for my business school. I was finally being able to have a stable place, paying my rent, also paying rent back home for my family, sending money every month. And it was such an amazing experience, honestly, just doing something easy, doing Google business pages for companies and building them these little websites so people can take appointments. And I was doing it for almost a year. But I started to be complacent and content with what I was doing. And as
Right.
I said at the beginning, being complacent is the worst thing that can happen to a person, because you
Yep.
start to lose focus, you start to drift away, to shift, to lose, to start to fail. And basically, without even seeing it, I was doing less prospection, I was doing less cold calls, I was doing less outreach. I was just happy with how everything was, and quickly I was at my peak. I was at around 14K a month, and then quickly I see just a shift to 7K a month, 5K a month, 3K a month, and I was like, oh my god. And I was just failing, and I didn't have the that light for it anymore. I wasn't enjoying it anymore, and I was like,
Yeah.
okay, let me just sunset this project. It was cool. It held me for almost 2 years during my studies, so it was very nice. It allowed me to have a great life. But let's just focus back on what I want to do. And so I had an opportunity through my school to connect with some people at Meta in France. And I just went over to Meta, and I was working actually on the ads, the Meta ads for small and medium enterprises in France and French speaking countries. And it was resonating with me because I already was selling these small and medium enterprises Google business profiles, doing their websites, socials, and everything. So I understood what I was doing, and it was just a continuation of what I was doing on my own. And I spent almost, I think, a year and a half at Meta back then. It was an amazing time. Unfortunately, I didn't meet Mark. He didn't come to France during my time there. But I met some amazing people, learned a lot, learned how these big companies work from the inside, how these innovators, work from the inside. And it just motivated me to start dreaming bigger and bigger, not just, okay, 14K a month was cool, but let me just find a way to build $1 billion business myself, and take it to the next level. And so yeah, I mean, amazing time at Meta. Then I started doing another startup back then. It was actually a year after Meta, when I was already working at BlockFi. So I'm just cutting through the chase now professionally,
Yeah.
from
Totally
Meta.
cool.
And that's when I started to become full-time in Web3. So at BlockFi, I was working on expanding the brand in France, as I was well strategically positioned, in France and in Europe in general. I was just expanding the BlockFi brand back then. But at the same time, I just decided to start building my own little startup. It was called SPO back then. Basically, the idea was to gamify soccer highlights. We call it football over here. Soccer highlights into NFTs, and make them tradable collectibles and everything.
Interesting.
It was back when also Sorare happened and popped out with the fantasy NFT games and
Right.
everything for soccer. So it was right in the same time. And it started well. I mean, I raised quickly a pre-seed, and everything was happening well. But then went to the leagues to pitch it, to get the rights, to acquire the IP rights and everything. And just the soccer leagues were like, we don't like this.
Yeah.
NFTs,
Yeah.
we don't understand what it is.
Yeah.
We really don't like it. And then I come across the French soccer league. They were interested. They were like, okay, let's do it together. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Finally, my big break is going to happen now. And
Right.
at the same time, Top Shot was happening in the US for the NBA. So I was like, okay, this is the right moment for me. And after 6 months of working, doing due diligence with French Soccer League, at the end, they told me, we're going to do it on our own, actually. We're going to develop it. And that just broke me back then. But I was like, okay, it happens. It's okay. I still have my job at BlockFi. Sometimes, you can't win them all, I guess.
Right.
And so I was really broken at the moment, because it was really, it was my first time raising funds for a project. I also invested some of my money into it. I hired a couple of people. And then, less than a year after that, telling everybody, yeah, it's not going to happen. We're going to sunset this. It was really a hard time for me.
Yeah.
But then I moved on to...
So two things I'm going to cut in. Two questions that you said a lot of interesting things there. One, you said you loved, again, back to this puzzle thing, right? With the barbers, you saw that they didn't have any Google presence. The question to me is, someone that what I'm getting at is you kind of just said, hey, I see things that are opportunities. Again, it's kind of back to that inherent versus skill sets that you can build. What are your thoughts there? Is it just getting out into the wild and observing thing? Is there a research skill set there? What do you think helps you kind of gain that skill set is my question.
I mean, honestly, I think it's very embedded in me from a young age. I mean, even
Mm-hmm.
back in primary school, I was trading and flipping Pokemon cards and trying to make a profit
Yeah.
on my friends. But I don't know. I see, I guess I see things a bit differently from most people. When I look at
Right.
something, I'm like, okay, there's something lacking here. Let me just add this piece, and I'm sure it will work out better.
Right.
And I mean, yes, same thing for the Google presence of these companies. I was like, look, if you add this, trust me, you will add more clients, you will add more profits, you will generate more revenue.
Right.
And even for the collectibles, for example, for the gamifying of the sport collectibles for soccer and stuff, in the end, Sorare just blew up a year after that, and it became $1 billion company. So I was maybe just ahead of the curve a little bit.
Yes.
But in the
Yes.
end, I
Yeah.
wasn't wrong inherently in my idea.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's very, very embedded in me. I just like
Mm-hmm.
trying
Mm-hmm.
things, trying things. I mean, it might not work out in the end, but at least you try it, and who knows what happens, in the end.
Yeah. And so I think that's kind of what I'm getting at. And tell me if this statement is fair. To build kind of this skill set of, because I think, again, back to the conversation, there's some things inherent, but there are a lot of things learned, right?
Yeah.
And so to get this skill set of like trying to see opportunity, is it fair to say that researching, putting yourself out there in the sense of trying as many new things as possible can help move you in the right direction? Do you think that's fair?
Yeah, exactly. And my advice is always to be open-minded, about things. Not like I see a lot of people. I mean, as soon as you speak of something they might not have experienced before, they will just say no, no, that's not for me. But just try it first. See,
Yeah.
maybe it will stick with you, and who knows? I mean, yeah, life. I mean, life is all about experiences in the end. You need to try
Yeah.
new things every day. Even
Yeah.
I don't know. Even if you try a new restaurant, maybe you will discover maybe something will pop in your head by just eating a different food or something. So try
Exactly.
new things and be open-minded. That's the most important thing in life, I think.
Yeah, and it's actually I think Gary Vee said this, or I was listening to some type of podcast or something, and I've really taken this mantra because you also hear this kind of related to the subject is people always say, I'm not good at anything.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what I like. And my response to that is you just haven't tried enough things because there's something out there that you like and that you can be really skilled at. You're just being complacent. And my fire alarm is now going
Oh,
off, which is really good for sound quality. So I don't want to say too many more amazing things. But yes, do you agree with that sentiment? I think
is everything
somebody's.
good over there?
Yeah, no, no, yeah. I think it's just somebody's burning some toast or
Oh,
something for
okay.
lunch. No,
At
I
least
don't.
the sound works well.
Yeah, yeah. My house is not burning down. Okay, we're back. But do you agree with that sentiment?
Yeah, I mean, totally. I believe that everybody has a skill. Nobody is born with no skills at all. I mean, it's not. I believe it's not possible, and most people end their life without having a special skill because they didn't try enough things. So
Yeah,
people, I mean,
yeah,
they start their life, they find a job, they just get complacent in where they are in their life, and they never try again new things, they never try to experience and stuff. And I mean, it's okay, everybody lives their lives on their own terms and everything. But if they haven't found that special gift that they already have inside of them, is because they didn't go out to the world and try to experience as many things as possible. So I
100%,
totally agree with
100%.
you.
And so the second thing that you said is really interesting, and we're eclipsed an hour at this point, and then we can get into Web3 unless there's anything else during this middle part that you want to touch on, which is we just encountered your first big failure in your mind, right? Devastated by not being able to get the contract with the French soccer company. They went on their own. Learning lessons from that, like looking back at that again. Yes, you were devastated, but you had to take something from that too. What did you take from that experience?
Honestly, it's kind of funny, but never trust bigger companies. Never trust bigger actors than you, and never put yourself in a position where you seem small and easily eatable in a way. Because back then, I mean, I was what, 21, 22, something like that, and I was like, I presented myself in a way where, okay, I have this little idea. I think it could help you guys. And I don't know, maybe let's try it out and stuff. And they just saw a kid, coming in with these crypto NFTs and stuff, something like that. They didn't take me seriously. So I believe the biggest takeaway was always present yourself in a confident way. I mean, you are building it anyway. So just show them that you are the best at what you're doing and why what you're doing will add value to them and to you and to the community that will use it later on, so the users. And never downplay yourself. Honestly, that's, of course, don't be arrogant. Don't try to be that guy that, oh my God, this guy is such an asshole and stuff like that. But never downplay yourself. Honestly, to anybody listening, never downplay yourself, because that you are setting yourself up for failure when you are talking with other business partners or potential clients that you could have. Because people never like somebody that seems under them or small compared to them. They always like somebody that is their equal or somebody bigger than them that they can have an interest to go and have a partnership with them. So never downplay yourself. Be confident, and yeah, that's my biggest takeaway from it, honestly.
Right, and that you actually made me think of a story, and I forget what exact agency it was, but really famous kind of design agency. They did, that was one of the smartest moves they made, right? Or the first big client pitch. They didn't have any money. They actually went into debt to rent the nicest furniture that they could, the nicest fake office. So when the client came in, it looked like they were legit and they were confident. And that one client then, bolstered them into notoriety. So it's the same type of concept. I would say another thing to add on and get your comments about this, and then we can move on, is I think another opportunity at that point in your life was confidence, yes. But, and I don't know if you did this, I'd love to get your feedback, but if your narrative was more concentrated on, yeah, you can do this yourself, but here are the problems I'm going to solve for you, which is, I'm small and nimble, I can do it quicker. You can get rid of the red tape in your bureaucratic system. And I have XYZ skill sets that you probably don't have. And really approach the entire conversation from what problems can you solve for the pain points that they're going to experience to build out this functionality. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, no, I totally agree about that. And especially about the being agile, in a way, being more flexible. I mean, big corporations, they move way, way slower than these new startups that pop up every day, because they have less red tape. They have less people, less bureaucracy in a way for startups, so they can go from idea to product in a smaller time frame than big corporations. And yeah, that is something that I also took away from it, so to know how to position yourself, even if you are smaller than your potential client, to just showcase why going through you will be less of a headache for them in the end. So that's something that I learned also from it, not because I presented it in a way, because now when I think about it, I believe that in an unconscious way, I presented it in a way, yes, you can do it yourself too, so that's why after 4 months of due diligence with me, understanding all the tech, that they decided to go their own way with it and just cut me off. But yeah, I mean, it was really a teaching moment.
Yeah, love it, man. Fantastic episode too. Any other highlights you want to get before we get into Web3?
I mean, it's part of Web3, but yeah, after BlockFi and after this experience, I moved on to Solana, and I started to work at Solana. So it was during the NFT rush, 2020. Summer of 2021, 2022.
Oh, so you actually worked for the blockchain?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Awesome. And how did you even, I think this is interesting because no one talks about this. How the hell do you get a job for Solana? Is it your traditional, like there was a posting and you sent in a resume?
Honestly, yeah.
Oh, awesome. Okay, cool. So what was your first job at Solana then?
Yeah, so at Solana, I was basically doing BD work, trying to bring projects into the ecosystem and trying to help them with filling out their needs, say it like that. Because I mean, back then, you need to understand it wasn't the Solana of today. Solana back then, it was really a small player compared to Ethereum, to the Ethereum ecosystem. Like Ethereum had the monopoly on NFTs, on DeFi, on everything.
Mm-hmm.
So the goal was to be attractive enough to bring new founders, new projects into the Solana ecosystem. And that goes through grants, that goes through being 24/7 available to the founders, by helping them through marketing, by even helping them by other type of resources, connecting them with developers if they don't know, if they have a technical lacking, connecting them with business people, with everything. So my main role in the beginning was to really go through X, back then Twitter, find new promising projects and basically just prospect them, do a cold outreach, and in the end close them to bring their projects into Solana.
Right.
And because it was different, because Solana, it's not even the same coding language as Ethereum and as EVMs, it's Rust and everything. So it was really about finding the project, closing them, and also helping them to onboard into the Solana ecosystem. And after that, also taking them by the hand, connecting them, for example, with VCs, with potential business angel investors, grants, everything. So it was all, I was doing all that at Solana back then, especially more on the gaming side.
And so time frame real quick. When was this?
This was mid 2021 to early 2022. So I spent around like 8 to 9 months at Solana.
Nice.
It was a great time, and then I moved on. If I'm correct, in February 2022, I moved on to a startup called Amused. Basically, their goal was to gamify the music industry through a fantasy game where basically you create your own virtual labels. You have real musician cards with scores that is based on their music performance on streaming platforms and everything. And the cards are collectibles and everything. And basically, I was doing also BD over there, and turned out to become head of development there. I was doing everything from artist IP acquisitions to partnerships with music labels such as Warner, Universal, bringing them on board with also DSPs such as Spotify, Deezer, Amazon Music, bringing them on board too. And yeah, I mean, it was a good time. I spent almost 2 years at Amused actually. So it was from.
Are they still a thing?
They are kind of still a thing. Unfortunately, it kind of they kind of had to downsize a lot.
Right.
I mean, I love the team. I love my time there.
What do you think went wrong there? Timing, ambition?
Honestly, it's about not being focused on the bigger picture, trying to go after every single trend that pops up.
Yes.
That was the biggest. That was the killer, honestly. That as soon as NFTs kind of slowed down a bit and something popped off, you see the founding team just go towards that direction. As soon as AI popped off, they wanted to go towards AI and market themselves as an AI music manager game. Just hopping on trends is always a killer because you forget the bigger picture, you forget the product that you are building. And in the end, you just fail, unfortunately. But I mean, they are still operating, I believe. They have not sunset yet, so I wish them all the best.
Yeah. Honestly. And so you say something very interesting, and I am steadfast on this. I actually made a good morning tweet about this. I'm turning my good morning tweets into making sure that whatever I say has a tangible insight and helps people, right? And my number one thing that one of my number one things, I have a lot of number one things. One of my number one things that I have conviction on is me and my co-founder, we took 6 months, right? We had multiple pages of what we wanted our company to be. And we literally started off streaming video games, right? But even we distilled it down to something we were passionate, down to one sentence, which was to bring back the lost art of genuine human connection, right? as we get more connected, what we're doing right now becomes critically important. It's already critically important in the Web3 space because not many people are doing what we're doing now, right? And that creates such clarity. So when I sit down in front of my computer at night, I have options. I could go down the rabbit hole on Discord. I could just get sucked in by the degenning thing, or I could step back and say, what is my actual mission? Bringing back the lost art of genuine human connection. I should cut my podcast up together and I should get this content out to as many eyeballs as possible. Is that kind of relate to what you were talking about, that companies suffered from having that succinct sentence?
So yeah, so there's two things. First, in this case, for example, it was more about as soon as a new trend popped up, they tried to integrate it into the product, which I believe kills the initial product in the end. But pivoting can be also a good thing, But I have this funny analogy where I say pivoting is like basically divorces. If you pivot one time, two times, you have 1-2 divorces, it's okay, it happens. You didn't fit well. But if you pivot 3, 4, 5 times, you divorce 4 or 5 times from different people, then maybe you should start to ask yourself some questions about yourself.
Right.
And therefore the company, maybe you are the problem in the end if you divorce so many times in a short time span.
Yeah.
But I mean, as I said, pivoting 1 time, 2 time, it can be a thing. And even starting with something and then just focusing on one special component of it is actually better way sometimes to evolve and to make the company thrive.
Yeah. I love the divorce analogy. That's fantastic. And I've never heard somebody say that. Another fantastic short on things people should be thinking about. One last question, and then let's get into your company. I'm very interested in this Solana. Even though it was 8 months, you're at a time where Solana is starting to get notoriety. Solana as a chain, and I want to talk broad, not about the BD stuff that you did, but more, what do you think Solana's struggle was there? And is it just a product, which I firmly believe in, is just being early? Ethereum was much bigger. That was the biggest hurdle that they had to overcome. Or do you think they could have done a better job delivering marketing on the product value fit or targeting a better subset of crypto customers? What are your thoughts there, knowing that you had context working for the actual blockchain?
I mean, I always say that it's easier when you look back at something and you say, oh, if we've done this and this and that, it would have worked better, But during that time period, though, I think Solana and the team, behind it, they took all the right steps, honestly. And it was more of a thing of being too early because Ethereum, I mean, when in 2021, Ethereum was already like gigantic, it was like the David of crypto. I mean, it was, and it still is the biggest ecosystem at the moment in crypto, so
right.
And the one with the most life and everything. But I mean, Solana didn't do anything wrong. I believe they just took their time. They started to figure things out step by step. Now, I mean, we can see it now, more and more amazing founders coming into the Solana ecosystem.
Right.
I think of work, Helios Labs and everything. And these people, they are working on scaling Solana, and Solana is scaling. People are more interested every day into Solana. And even with the meme coin phase, that happened, it brought a lot more of attention to Solana. And I mean, I believe the more time passes and the more the product will find its own PMF.
Yeah.
I don't think that Solana and Ethereum are competitors. I believe there will be different ecosystems for different things. Because Ethereum, you will do one thing on Ethereum that you can't do on Solana, and you will do something on Solana that you can't do on Ethereum.
Right.
So I don't see chains as competitors, but I see them as different different ecosystems. I like to think about it as countries. I mean, Ethereum is the US, Solana is Europe. Different landscapes. You can do different things in those type of landscapes. So that's how I view it.
Yeah. No, I love that, man. And the other thing that you kind of said there is, and we talk about this a lot on the show. If anybody that is a super successful business or entrepreneur tells you that it was all blood, sweat, and tears, and there was no luck and timing involved. They're lying to your face, right? And
Yep.
so, to your point, you mentioned timing with Solana, and now they've matured, right? And it's hard to build what they were trying to build when Ethereum was already massive at this point, right? But they didn't give up, and they kept on persevering, and they kept on working on their messaging and trying to find their fit in this space. And so, just really interesting insight. I appreciate that. So, moving on. I mean, we've tapped episode 3, but let's talk about you, man. Let's talk about, and just time check. I told you an hour and a half, 10 minutes. We're going to be in an hour and a half. Do you have a little extra time? Because I'd love to dive into Primis.
Yeah, I mean, we can go another 20, 25 minutes. It's
Perfect.
okay.
Perfect. Let's do that. So I like to start off this quickly. 2 minutes max. We're in Silicon Valley. You got to pitch, man. You gotta tell me what Primis is, why it's different, and what you're doing. So what I'm trying to get at is, let's do this in a condensed amount of time, succinct and concise. So have at it, man.
Yeah. So Primis Protocol, the elevator pitch, we are building decentralized game servers powered by liquid staking. What does this mean? Is basically we found new utility for liquid staking, and we found a way to back these virtual worlds and these games because we believe our simple thesis is that gaming in virtual worlds will be the biggest narrative in Web3 and will be the biggest gateway for mass adoption. But unfortunately, until now, most of the metaverses and games failed because, I mean, there were misaligned incentives, there was no impacting value, there were no economic systems, and that is something that we're tackling with liquid staking. And to put it compare it to a real life, for example, in real life, you take an energy, you transform it, it creates an impacting value around it. And today, for example, Ethereum is an energy, we transform it through liquid staking. And we take that impacting value to incorporate it into these new virtual worlds and new games. Basically, when you stake your ETH or LSCs into Primis and you create a bond, that bond will generate a new realm, a new game, a new universe, basically, that will be tied down to real crypto assets, so ETH in this context. So, for example, the more ETH for longer periods of time you put in, the bigger the virtual world you will have with more complex game mechanics, gameplay, game theory, and everything. In the end, every virtual world that will be created will be interoperable, so you can go and play into another person's virtual world. You can move your assets to it, and the bigger picture down the road is to be also interoperable over different ecosystems, to have Ethereum bonds, Solana bonds, Bitcoin bonds, and to be interoperable, and you can move your assets from gaming into Ethereum to game into Solana to game into Bitcoin. So that's the idea behind Primis.
No, it's a very interesting idea. So let me say it in my own words, because it's a new kind of idea. Well, it's not new, but it's something I haven't heard. And what I'm hearing is, if I put ETH in, my ETH is helping you fund my own gaming universe. Yep. So in essence, do I own that, or do you still own it?
No, you own your game. You own your own game universe. Basically, it's made by gamers for gamers and owned by the gamer in the end.
But so with me staking my ETH and the residuals that come from that, you're using your talent and developers to build me a gaming ecosystem.
Yeah, so everything is actually automated. So you come in, you deposit your ETH or other type of LSTs, for example, I don't know, mental ETH, other LSTs. It will generate a bond, Primis bond, and it will be an NFT, a Primis bond NFT, and that NFT will be your gateway to your own realm, your own virtual world, with its own game mechanics and gameplay that will be tied down to how much ETH you put in for what time period. And everything is automated. I mean, between the moment you deposit your ETH and the moment you are into your realm, it's like a matter of minutes, depending on how long the transaction takes to be done on chain. And you have access to your own little world. And you need to imagine it as Minecraft in a way. You have access to your universe, and you can build wherever you want into it.
Gotcha. Yes. So that I think that's the good analogy. So to break that down, if I deposit my ETH, I'm getting my own Minecraft plot of land and whatever I build. So let's say this, there's with this business model, you're going to have two different types of clients, right? There's going to have someone like me that believes in you as a person and says, this is a really interesting idea, but I don't have time to build anything. What is that are you thinking about passive versus active is what I'm getting at?
Yeah.
And what does that look like?
So, for example, let's say you have a large amount of ETH, you want to deposit because you just want to profit from the yield and you're not interested in the gaming side. So it will still generate realms, and you can take those realms and rent them out to some people that just want to game on them, or even to gaming companies that want to build their own games on these decentralized game servers. And you can get first the yield and also a passive income from renting out these game servers that you just generated.
Right.
And then there's also the people that just want to create their own little world with their own little gameplay, with their own AI agents that will play with them inside of it. It will be like their private garden in a way, and they will just create wherever they want. They will build whatever they want into it, and they will just invite their friends to game sometimes together or stuff. And the big idea that we have, and down the road in like a year or something, is to integrate also flip guided diffusion models. So it's AI models where basically it generates this realm of yours, but you can also put in a prompt. For example, you're a fan of Harry Potter or Star Wars, for example. You put in the storyline of Star Wars, and the game universe will be generated according to the Star Wars storyline, with game mechanics that incorporate the Star Wars storyline and everything, So, and game theory that incorporates Star Wars. So really have a prompt to game world. Well, you just put in a text and it generates the word that you want to, and then you can still customize it as you want to down the road.
Nice. And so on the other side, which is the active gamer that doesn't have any ETH to stake, can they still come into the ecosystem as just as a gainer, as a gamer, and then potentially earn money from being in the ecosystem? What does that look like?
Yeah. So, I mean, just similarly to the Minecraft analogy, some people don't own the Minecraft servers. They just come in, they game a little bit. So you can come in as a gamer. You have no ETH, you have nothing. You just come in, you choose which realm you want to integrate, which realm you want to play in. You just go in, you play. And I mean, the more you play, you will earn rewards inside of that world. And those rewards will be, of course, tied down to the ETH value that generated all this realm around you. And so you will get a part of the yield as you go.
Yeah, love it. And so the only other kind of question or thought I have and want insight into is this crypto is still volatile, right? Yes, the ETH ETF just got approved and that's going to help the stability, but it still can go up and down. And if you're basing an entire concept off of liquid staking and the price and stability of crypto, let's say it falls apart 50% because the world's fallen apart and things happen. How are you combating against that?
So one important thing is I view it as in a crypto native vision where one ETH will always equal one ETH no matter what happens. So that's how we tackle it on our side. We don't let the outside values in fiat dictate how we build and how we transform the ecosystem, but we just focus on the ecosystem in its own way. And I mean, if we take a look at it from a fiat perspective, I mean, we're not building for the next 6 months. We're building for 5 years from now, 10 years from now. We want to still be major players in the space and everything. So we believe that prices will become more stable. I mean, as we talked about for Solana, for example, we are still maturing. We are still in that maturing cycle, where things, they are still volatile, but for example, they are less volatile than 2-3 years ago. Bitcoin won't do 100x or crash 100x in like 24 hours or something. For Ethereum. So that's the two things. So first, one ETH will always equal one ETH, one Sol will always equal one Sol, and stuff. And secondly, we are working on the long term, so we don't really care about cycles that happen. Bear market, bull market. We are working and building into them and outside of them. because it's a 10 plus year vision, 15 plus year vision, that we have for this. So
Right.
that
Right.
doesn't really matter to us.
And so that then lends to kind of my final question when it comes out of finances. There's still operating costs, the company, right? And
Yeah.
so is it the profit from the liquid staking? Are you banking on the economies that are formed within these games? Like how are those operational costs being paid for? Right?
Yeah. So first, there's bond fees. So when you're going to deposit ETH and create your own bond, there's an optional bond fee that users can put in or not. For example, you can say that you want like 1% of everything that will be generated will go back to Primis, or 10% or 0% is up to the user. But for example, the bigger the percentage you put in into a bond fee, it will turn down as a multiplicator for your own yield down the road. So users are incentivized to put a percentage of the final yields towards Primis. So that's one way we generate a revenue. And the second way is by betting on these economical systems that we'll build inside of these virtual worlds down the road, where we'll also take a fee from the transaction that will happen in these gaming ecosystems that we believe will be very live and thrive a lot. So that's our two-way revenue model.
Yeah. No, I love it, and that makes sense. Anything else that you want to talk about Primis Protocol to share with us, whether it be quote unquote alpha or things that you just clearly want to convey? Hold, please. Okay. I got 3 dogs in my house, and if one barks, all hell breaks loose. Again, like I said, I messed this podcast up more than you. So back to today, quote unquote alpha, or I'm also more just interested in like any other messages you clearly want to convey about your company, value propositions, anything on your mind.
Yeah. So first of all, when you think, this is the thing, when you think about gaming in Web3 and virtual worlds and everything, you need to understand why would user be interested. They're not really interested in having just all their actions be on chain and that's it, just for data analytics and stuff like that. Most of the gamers, they don't really care about that. So they care about an ecosystem where they can play, earn, and thrive inside of it. And that's our goal at Primis. We want to build this ecosystem and not build it in an arbitrary or random algorithmic way like it's done with NFT collectibles or something, but we want to tie everything down to sound economic systems behind it through the value of the assets, that back everything, whether it is ETH in the first place, down the road, Solana and Bitcoin. So that's what we're trying to achieve here. And we believe that's the sound way to go with Web3 gaming and Web3 virtual worlds. Right. And a little alpha. So we are going, and this is exclusive to the Mikey podcast and to the Midlife Crisis. So we are deploying our testnet next Friday, so the 31st of May. It will be the liquid staking side, so users can come in, deposit. It will be on Holiski, so they can come in, deposit Holiski ETH or Holiski staked ETH, earn rewards from that. And also it will be an incentivized testnet, so there will be quests inside of the DApp. A lot of amazing quests will happen inside of the Primis Protocol testnet DApp. So yeah, exciting times ahead. That's the major alpha that we are launching.
Hell yeah. I always, there's a couple things that are like secretly benefiting me, right? When I have this organic, heartfelt, genuine conversation with you, you're a little more inclined to give me alpha, right? So you just gave me a little alpha. I appreciate that. One last question on kind of like the mechanics of how it works. Is this gaming ecosystem desktop, mobile, desktop only? Like, how does this manifest itself?
Yeah, so in the beginning, it's going to be web-based. And we encourage people to go through the desktop route in the beginning to play. Yeah. But the gaming ecosystem, it won't happen in the testnet on Friday. So the testnet on Friday is the liquid staking side and how we do the liquid staking. And then the gaming alpha world will happen after the summer. So let's say October, November. So that's another alpha again. Yeah. There will be a launch of the gaming ecosystem then.
Okay. And so this is usually kind of the way I close out the Web3 in your company is exactly what you did. Anything else? Well, thank you, one, deeply for sharing alpha. Two, anything else that you wanna, and how I usually describe it is the next 6 to 12 months, what does that look like? Anything else that you want to add? I actually have one more formal questions. It's a softball, so don't be scared. And then I'll say my closing comments. We'll call it a day.
Yeah, so 6 to 12 months. So as I said, first we have the testnet, liquid staking incentivized testnet launching on Friday. Working on getting the TGE happening in the third quarter of 2024. After that, mainnet launch of the liquid staking side on Ethereum, and then Stocknet and other layer twos. After that, yeah, so there will be the gaming world alpha, and then yeah, we continue to build, we continue to grow step by step. It's going to be an exciting ride for the next year. We have a lot of things planned in the pipeline. We have a lot of work. So yeah, for now, that's all I can say. I can't share more at the moment, but it's already a lot, I guess, a lot of alpha at once.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I appreciate it. And again, I would say the number one flaw I've seen in Web3 creators, their founders in general, is they're sharing way too much information, because this space is not like your traditional typical startup world. Your community and people skewer you if you do not deliver on what you say. Yeah. So it's a tough, brutal ecosystem. But
I mean, yeah, to add to that, I'd rather under promise and over deliver than over promise and under deliver and get myself crucified on X.
Number one strategy I advise for all founders on Web3 is that exact strategy. Yeah. So, like I said, one last question. Very simple. You've probably been in a ton of spaces. You've probably listened to a ton of spaces, probably even listened to podcasts. This is the first one you've been on, but would love your honest feedback. Feel free to be critical. Your time on the Midlife Crisis Mikey G podcast compared to what you've experienced that's out there currently in the Web3 ecosystem.
I mean, and we talked about this yesterday in our intro call, but I say it again here. I love the fact that it's truly a journey. We go from the beginning to the end. It's not only about the superficial layer, but we really are digging deep, inside of the podcast. So that's something that I really love. And I feel like it's not a podcast, but it's a discussion between two people that get to know each other. So I really love that too. As you said, as we talked about, it's like a campfire. We're sitting, we are just sharing life stories, and like, hey man, we actually can be friends. So that's, I really, really love the experience, and would love to do down the road, maybe 6 months from now, when we build a lot of things and shape a lot of things in new podcasts, where we update things and continue down this journey, So really, really love the experience, honestly.
I appreciate it, man. And it warms my heart, because you're yet another person that just understands what I'm going for. And you felt what I'm trying to deliver. So it means a ton to me. I really, really appreciate it. I am going to say my closing comments, and then we'll call it a day. But I got to let my dog in first, because he's scratching at the door like an a-hole. Hold on. Come on, buddy. In, get in. All right, man. So this is what I think. One, I appreciate how genuine you were. And it was a fantastic conversation. Out of, 200 plus founders at this point, you're definitely one of the top founders that has a really unique, interesting story. And I definitely talk about this a lot. That adversity is so critical for founders. So the fact that you've had that, and you've gone all over the place, right? You've built Google pages, you've actually worked for huge companies, you work for freaking Solana, which not many people that I talk to that are bullish about Web3 actually have worked for like a legit chain Web3 company. So all of those perspectives and the young life perspective about the revolution and stuff, they've made you a better person. The way your mom has treated you to be curious, like, I just urge you to keep that mindset, man. And one of my favorite things that we talked about was that bad stuff doesn't last forever, right? Such a critical learning moment. And the fact that you've embraced that multiple times is huge. and I would urge you to continue to think that, right? Because it's going to be good and it's going to be bad. And then the other thing, and you have the vision, right? But what I see a lot of people that come on the show and then, all great ideas and fall short is just hyper vigilant on running the business. How do I monetize and how do I cover my operating costs? Because you're far beyond that, right? I've had plenty of people that just had a roadmap that came on my show because I had to start as well too. So I was getting bottom of the barrel founders. I wasn't getting people like yourself that actually have experience in getting your stuff together. So continue to think about that, continue to grow on that, and just surround yourself with great people. But genuinely, like I said, it's the beginning of the friendship, man. I'm totally here for you. I'm going to cut this podcast up into really great short form content. We're going to have so much to deliver and share. And I definitely want you to come back on the podcast. I cannot wait to see what you build. And yeah, you got a new friend in Mikey G, man. And I just can't wait to build, learn, and grow together. So thank you so much. Like I said before in our intro call, the number one thing that people like me and you have that is the most valuable thing is time. And you just gave me an hour and 40 minutes of your time. And I deeply, deeply appreciate that. So thank you so much, man.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you again, Mike. I truly, truly appreciated this experience. So as I said, it was my first time on the pod, participating, and I truly, truly loved it because it didn't feel like a pod, but like a journey, as a genuine conversation, as I said before this. So yeah, thank you again. It was an amazing experience, and I would definitely recommend it to everybody, to take on a journey with you, with Mike.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it. And with that being said, the Midlife Crisis Show is coming to an end. We appreciate you all. Stay tuned on my Twitter for new podcasts coming out. The Plague Spaces weekly, Friday, 2 p.m. PST. Same format, just in spaces, because unfortunately, like Khouba knows, you got to play the game when you're in Web3. Not a huge fan of spaces. I much prefer to do this, but we got to do it. We love you all. Khouba and Mikey G are out.
Thank you.